Well, hello everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. My next special guest is the Eisner and Harvey nominated Tony Fleecs. He is writer, artist. You kind of do a little bit of everything, Tony, man.
I
Creative.
do.
You got a bunch of stuff going on we were talking about before we jumped in. But first of all, how are you doing? How are things with you?
I'm good. I feel good. Um, things are very busy, but it's all the good kind of busy, like it's things are all going really well right now. And like I said before we got on, like I've done both ways. I've done it when it's not going very well, and I've done when it's going very well. And this is definitely, it's hectic, but it feels good. It feels, less terrifying.
Well, you got a lot of titles going on at one time here. I would like to kind of dig into a little bit of how you juggle that, but can we go back a little bit, Tony? I would love to understand where the passion for art came from, the passion for storytelling, because they're very much related. And then, from that creator side, where did that all develop? Was at a young age? Was there someone in your life that really encouraged that kind of aspect of you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I'm the oldest of five kids, and my next sibling is 4 years after me. So I was like basically an only child for 4 years, and then I had just like a ton of other siblings show up, and so I sort of joked that like I all of a sudden I was abandoned, and I was not. I was always very well cared for, but my parents had to sort of stop having me be the only thing in their lives, and all of a sudden it was just all these other kids that they had to start taking care of. And I would, as a little boy, pitch in on that, but a lot of times I was just sort of left to my own devices. And so my dad would bring home these big reams of paper from his job, and I could just sit there and draw on those and sort of imagine. And I feel like for the longest time we didn't even have our own TV. So I would just see stuff on TV at like friends' houses or relatives' houses, and then I would just sit there and like create my own stuff in on paper, Like I remember we went and saw ET, and then for years I would just draw ET constantly, like everywhere, just and I had a cousin, well, he's my dad's cousin, and he could draw. He was very like creative, and I guess he's probably only like 13, 14 years older than me.
Okay.
So he was like a kid when I was born, but he could draw. And so they would oftentimes like put me with him, and we would just hang out and watch TV, and he would draw cartoons off of TV. And so that was really inspiring. And like he was sort of like would like, I feel like he was a teenager just sort of like picking on me, but I could like hang out with him and like look up to him and draw next to him. Um and then and then we had another friend of the family who was a big nerd, and she like brought in like Star Trek and Star Wars and like all this stuff, and sort of introduced in comics and introduced me to all that. And so that sort of became like my whole thing. Like I just loved reading comics and Star Wars and just like fantasy and stories, and like that was like I sort of had this whole like world of creativity, and I was wrapped up in that a whole lot as a kid. And I sort of had a path from like my brothers and sisters. I don't feel like any of them really had a like I'll do this for a living when I grow up. Like you remember kids used to be like I'll be a fireman or I'll be an astronaut or whatever. I was always gonna make cartoons, and so that's sort of like where I was always pointed in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. Was there a certain like character that you drew the most that you know what I mean? What was the most favorite thing that you were drawing at that time?
Like my own characters.
Yeah, yeah. Were you creating your own characters and have they
Yeah.
been used in titles that you've done all these years later?
Yeah, well, yes, a few of my characters have showed up in Local Man. A lot
Yeah.
of like the superhero characters in Local Man are Tim Seeley's characters. He was a lot more fertile and much more superhero oriented when he was in high school. I would have to do like some superhero stuff, but then I would just have tons of like, like maybe I'll do cartoons about like, this sort of like I don't even know what to compare it to. It would almost be like Dragon's Lair, or you know what, Space Ace, like
Yeah.
Dom Space Ace, like that type of stuff. But they would be like slackers, and I don't know. Uh, yeah, I would get on a character for a while and draw them. God, I can't even remember some of their names, but I could probably draw them from memory if I
Yeah.
just, sat down and started drawing them. But a lot of it was me creating my own characters, or like ripping off like Rob Liefeld drawings or Jim Lee drawings, or you know,
Think we all did that in the 90s, right? Late 80s,
yeah, for
early
sure.
90s.
I've got definitely like out in my studio, I have like a few of my like when I was a kid comics, and
Yeah.
I can look at them and I can go like, ah, that's from Youngblood, and that's from Cats, and that like I can just sort of like piece together what I was stealing from.
Yeah. Did Image Comics, it sounds like with Tim and you and me and myself, I mean, Image Comics had such a huge impact on my love for comics in
Yeah.
that the early 90s, McFarlane and Liefeld, Jim Lee. Did it have like, is that where you got a lot of your passion from comic books is from that early 90s Image boom?
Oh yeah, that was huge for me. I like the first comics that where I went to a comic store and I bought something there, and I was like, this is like the first time I went to a comic store basically. And the comic that made me want to come back every week was when Jim Lee was on X-Men issue 3. So like adjectiveless X-Men issue 3, the last Chris Claremont issue. And I couldn't get there every week because I couldn't drive yet. But as I would try to get to the comic store as much as possible and try to keep up as much as possible. So I had, like a pretty decent run of like that era, Golden Blue Team, X-Men, X-Force, X Factor, and then I didn't even realize like I had no idea Image was coming. Just one day there was Youngblood, and it happened so fast that like my shop didn't wasn't prepared for it. And so I only had like the second printing of Youngblood, and then like Youngblood #2 and Youngblood Strike File and stuff like that. So it just sort of like it came as a huge shock to me, and I immediately felt the difference, like I am like even as a 13, 14-year old, I guess that's the perfect time for this because you're like rebellious
Yeah.
and you understand like this is what the man would let them do. Like this is what Marvel would let them do. And this is just they can do whatever they want. And when you look at it now, it's like, well, they did almost exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty much the same, but it's like
Yeah.
more violent, sexier,
Yeah.
guns are bigger, and there was like nothing corny. Like there would like Marvel put out so many books that there would always be like some corny ones in the mix. And so with Image, it was just like it's all just like the best guys, especially right at the beginning. It's just like every month. Well, I suppose they're months apart, but it's just like, oh, now Jim Lee put one out, and oh, now there's Savage Dragon, and you're just like, this is crazy. And so that's why when you ask about like, was there a character that I drew a lot growing up, like it's all my own characters because I just was like all the people that influenced me were making their own characters, and I could tell just by looking at it that that was so fertile for them, and so like it felt to me at least that that their output was a lot more creative and energetic when they could do whatever they wanted. So that was always sort of the direction I was pointed in.
Yeah. Yeah. I I could tell, obviously, reading you and Tim for a long time, but I could tell how much you love Image, just because of some of this is one of my favorite covers right here, the Max homage. I mean, that is such a dope, and you have a few of them that you've done,
Yeah,
kind of, calling back to some of those amazing covers from Image. And so I get really excited when I see those too, because I feel like I have such a huge respect for what they did in the 90s
yeah,
and why I still love comics today. So yeah, I love it, man. And it definitely comes through on everything that you're doing with local, man. It almost
good.
feels like that comic book could be done by Image in the 90s. Especially like that back part of the comic book when you flip it over and you start from
Yeah,
the is pretty awesome. Now the story though seems like it's a lot more mature. But other than that, it's incredible.
well, yeah, Tim and I, like those were the books we read when we were that age, like when we were in our most influential, like when stuff could really get to us. You know how like your favorite bands and your favorite TV shows and stuff are the ones when you're like 15 years old.
Yeah.
um that like those were our Image Comics years. And so the flip side of Local Man is always like we're trying to do that exact energy and give like that, get as much of that feeling as we possibly can into it, But then the main side of Local Man is us sort of like working out like deep emotional stuff, and some of it is like our connection to that like that stuff that we loved when we were younger, but a lot of it is just us like going like using the format of those superhero stories to say like, all right, well let's try and talk about some real stuff and some real feelings and sort of like real world events, and like how can we sort of like put this through the prism of 1990s Image Comics and sort of do something different, but while paying like respect to those, to those books that meant so much to us, to like say like, because also like Spawn's the only one. Spawn and Savage Dragon are the only one of those that are still going, and Savage Dragon has evolved and changed in such a way, and Spawn has evolved and changed in such a way that neither of them are like commenting on the shit that they were doing in 1993, so it's sort of like a lane that nobody was sort of messing with, and we felt like we were sort of uniquely suited to get in there and sort of and dig around in that stuff and try and make something special. And I feel like like you dig it, and like the people that dig Local Man, I can see them coming when I'm at a convention or a signing or something. I'm like, oh, here comes my guy. This guy knows about, no, he knows about Pit.
Yeah, exactly. Pitt, Max. I mean, there were so many amazing titles that came out during that time frame. And yeah, man, I have fond memories. Again, issue ones of a lot of those are very easy to get because they made like a bazillion of them, which on
Mhm.
the good hand, it's awesome. Because, if you want to go back to that time frame, it's very simple. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. It comes through, Tony, when we talk about Local Man. Absolutely one of my favorite titles right now. So congratulations on that. It's been a lot of
Thank
fun. Did it surprise you? The way I'm reading it, right? We're what at issue 10.
Mhm.
I feel like that's pretty successful these days to have any comic that goes 10. I mean, so many different publishers are really sticking to those 4 to 6 issue arcs, and then maybe the next year picking it back up again. So to have an ongoing like that, I feel like it's been pretty successful. Are you feeling that as well?
I mean, it's been we've never lost money on it. Like it's always sold well enough that we're never in the red, black. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like we're not. Our ledger is always up. Like we're always doing okay. It's not you know, like Feral or Stray Dogs or these ones where it sells so well that you're just like, oh, thank goodness. This sort of makes it a little more comfortable to be able to do something like Local Man that doesn't sell at that much. But
Yeah.
like I said, it has a very like dedicated readership, and the people that feel that book feel it really hard. It's also like it's a weird pitch, and so it's hard to grab people that aren't from like what I'm assuming is our generation, and say like, "You remember Youngblood?" And they're like, "No," and you're like, "All right, well, imagine the '90s." So it's a little harder to pitch, but like it's grown and grown like a dedicated readership, and we're very excited about that. And we're doing stuff in this next arc that pays off a lot of the stuff that we set up, and we're doing another arc of another run of those image homage covers, and we're leading up to like we just had the Bad Girl special, and then we're doing 4 issues this next arc, and then there's gonna be another big special, and it's one that I think longtime Image fans will be really psyched about, or at least it's something that I would be psyched about if I saw somebody was doing it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, man. I try to talk it up as much as I can. It's definitely one of my
thank you.
favorite titles right now. But again, I think we're at that age where it just brings back so many fond memories of that time in the 90s with Image Comics. Tony, real quick, before we get into some of the current titles, um, you do amazing art. You're obviously a creator writer. Is there one that you consider yourself more than the other, or are they the same to you? Like, what
I
would you
mean,
put yourself
there's
first? Are you a writer or are you an artist first?
yeah, I guess they're sort of the same
Yeah.
to me, although I don't get to write. I'm really in a flight path right now. Uh, I feel like I draw more than I write, or at least I have in my life drawn more than I write, just because I've had way more jobs where I was the artist. Only recently did I sort of become just a writer on things, like Uncanny Valley. There are issues of that where I don't have to draw a single thing on it. And so it's like a whole different, like Army of Darkness, I draw covers for that, and Feral and Stray Dogs, I sort of have my hands in that. I'm like I draw covers and I do thumbnails and stuff. So I'm sort of heading towards a place where I'm doing some stuff that I don't draw anything on. But I don't know if that's necessarily, like what I want to end up doing. I feel like I like having I like drawing and writing together, and that's the ultimate goal. So yeah, I guess I consider myself a writer, artist, writer. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But if somebody if I had to explain to somebody what I do, you know, I guess like 6 months ago I would have just told somebody I just draw, and now I write so much more that I would tell somebody I guess that I'm a writer. I don't know, it's weird. I usually just say I make comics,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't have storytelling without either of them in comics anyway. So to your point, they are one and the same from a storytelling standpoint. But I just curious if you had a passion for one over the other. Um,
Yeah, I guess man, it's tough to say. Some like I get the same charge out of writing something that I really feel like works as I do when I draw something that came out great.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know.
yeah.
But like I said, eventually I've got a few books that I want to just write and draw entirely myself. And so that cartoonist is hopefully where I'll be able to land, end up there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're very good at both of them. Let's talk about some of the. I mean, you got so many things going on, Tony, that I find it mind blowing that you're able to cart to kind of separate each of these stories and be able to. Because I would be all over the place, man, but my brain doesn't work that way. I got to do one thing at a time. But man, you got Army of Darkness, you got Feral, you got Local Man, which is on a little bit of a break, and then you have Uncanny Valley. I mean, that's four different titles that are ongoing or you're working on at the same time. Like, how do you balance all of that as a creator? Because I would think that that is something that you need to be very good at.
Well, I'm not very good at it. I just where I've sort of landed at right now is I don't have anything. I mean, besides doing stuff like this, I do a lot of promotion, I do a lot of signings, I do trying to do the other side of it, not just the creating the books, but the selling them, the telling people about them. So besides just making the books, I also am out there sort of promoting them all the time. And I'm not especially good at time management. So the only thing that I found that works is just to only do this for the time being. So I've taken on more than I should have. And so I don't do anything else. I used to go to the movies once a week, and now I have to sort of take a pass on that mostly as well. I didn't make it to the comic store the last couple of weeks either. I just wake up and I have a list of things and I'm just trying to bang through them, and I've got prioritized deadlines, right? I know I need to have Army of Darkness and Uncanny Valley written soon, and I have to do my pass on the next Local Man and start drawing that because that's due on the 13th. And then I have to, it's just I know when everything's due and I know about how much time it takes, but the only real way to do it is to hustle constantly. And the only way I'm able to do that is leaning on my collaborators. On Local Man, I've got Tim, who's often in the same position I'm in, having taken on too much stuff. But we sort of have the story figured out, and we can sort of bounce back and forth, and it all the way Local Man works is we work out an outline together, and then Tim does a first draft, and then I'll do a second draft, and then we'll draw it. And so that's easier to get done than say like a Feral where I have to write it and then thumbnail it and then do the covers with Trish and with Tone. And then something like Uncanny Valley where I have to write the whole thing. Nobody else is doing a first draft, it's just me. But luckily on Uncanny Valley and on Feral and on Army of Darkness, I have everything outlined far enough out where I've got Army of Darkness outline till the end. So like I'm 3 issues away from being done with that, and then I can sort of hang that up and move on and just focus on only doing 4 things at a time instead of 5 things at a time, whatever. Right now I have six books going, and so it is just a lot of bouncing around.
Are there
But
two that you're working on that no one knows and you can't talk about, or are there two that we should already know?
no, nobody knows about them.
Oh,
And
okay, okay. Yeah.
one of them is just a one shot, so it's not like it's cluttering up my whole life.
Yeah.
And then one of them's a 3 issue thing. So neither of them are like big major things, but it is, stuff I just got to keep pushing the ball.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and then we took on me and my studio mates took on like a studio project, putting together these like sort of putting together comics, packaging comics. And I don't know why I agreed to it, but it's just like, well, I feel like we could probably fit that in, and that seems like a decent job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just constantly bouncing around and only doing this for the time being. I'm sort of where I used to like look forward to the weekend or my day off or whatever. Now I'm looking forward to September,
Yeah.
and even that, if we're being honest, probably October. Like because I think in September I'm gonna do like a tour across the country and hit up a bunch of shops and stuff, but I'll have less like actual writing and creating work to do, but it'll still be just as grueling, humping across the U.S. and back.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds fun though. Do you enjoy doing that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love going to shops, and I feel like there's a real, uh, you can't beat going to a shop and like looking at a reader's hand and shaking their hand and putting the comic right in their hand, and that makes an impact on people, and it certainly did on me.
Yeah.
Like I would, if I met somebody at my local comic shop or something, whenever their books would come in, I would, even if I didn't buy every one of them, I would always be like, that guy's all right. And so like it makes a difference to me. And I go to shops. I was at a shop this weekend that I've been to like 3 times before, and you can see with your own eyes that you're like building a readership, like you can see people that you've seen before who used to only buy like Army of Darkness or something, and now you can see they're holding like Feral too, and they're holding Uncanny Valley or whatever. So it's sort of like we get so online, and I get so in my head about like, oh, I gotta go on Instagram and TikTok, but I'm just like, or I could just go right to these places and talk right to these people, and then you're forming a relationship with the retailers, and they remember you. Yeah, so hopefully hopefully I'll be able to make that happen in September. That's sort of my uh when I'm not thinking about working and writing and drawing, I'm thinking about setting up these stops across the country in September.
That's so cool, man. Now let's get into these four titles real quick to make sure everyone's aware of the four things that you going on. We kind of talked about most of them already, but obviously we have Local Man, which when does that start back up again, Tony?
We sent the files to print, so I think it's going to FOC this week.
Okay.
So within the next month. It feels like it has been like you said it's been on extended break. We never really think about it that way, but it is like it's like the arc will end and then we take a month and then the trade comes out and then one shot comes out and then the arc starts again. So there's usually only just 1 month off.
Yep.
But because the like this time we did Bad Girls, and so that doesn't count as like an issue, it does not like issue 10 or 11 or whatever. So people go like, when's this book coming back? I'm like, well, I'm constantly working on this book. But yeah, that should be back, I think, in May,
In May, yeah.
issue 10. And then, like I said, that arc goes up through 13, and then we're doing another special at the end of that. And we got cool, every issue of Local Man we get like guides from the 90s to do the flip cover and the B cover on those. So issue 10 has Will Spertasio, and then issue 11 has Tom Rainey, Terry Ordway.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Yeah. And what's cool about that is when these guys still own their characters, then like Wildstar's on the cover. So it's like it really like continues to push like our fake narrative that Third Gen and Crossjack and all these Local Man characters came from the Image 90s. Like there they are with Wildstar, and there they are with Shadowhawk, or like when Todd Knock did that cover, he drew Shadowhawk. And then I remembered when Extreme Studios was around, like whenever somebody created a character that wasn't Rob Liefeld in the indicia, it would always say like this character TM Todd Knock or Eric
Yeah,
Stevenson, Chap Yap.
I love it. That's so awesome.
So yeah, he put his character that he still owned from the Extreme Studios days on our cover too, and we've been able to use her a couple of times in Local Man. So yeah, fun stuff like that. Lots of cool stuff coming up in Local Man, including some more image cameos. But we're really like digging into a fun. It's always sort of like sad fun, but uh, but it's about this next arc is called Lost Ones, and it's about sort of like loss and how when things change, how we deal with that, and but it also has fun stuff like Local Man gets a sidekick, and we sort of like introduce new characters, and we find out what the deal is with his dog Pepper, and
Yeah.
so so yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff coming up in Local Man. We're excited about that. I actually need to be working on that, after we're done with this call.
I just reminded you of another deadline. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not supposed to, I'm not trying to make this stressful for you, Tony.
that's okay. It was stressful before you got here. Not your
Gotcha.
fault.
I'm glad I'm not causing the stress, man.
Yeah.
But I think that's the love for someone my age that grew up during that time frame and reading Local Man is you do have that vibe, but man, the seriousness and the tone within it also causes you to even question yourself at times too, right? Because they're very relatable things that he's going through. Whether it's relationship wise, whether it's coming back to an environment that you thought would be less hostile, and you find out it's extremely hostile, maybe burning some bridges and then having to pay the price for that. Just there's all these different things that I think no matter who you are, right? We're all human and we all have these same flaws. And I love that it kind of draws that out of you as you're reading it and brings out a little bit of emotion, which I don't know. I feel like that's the goal of a really good story. So I think you and Tim and the rest of the team is knocking out of the park on that.
Thanks,
I'm
man.
enjoying it a lot, man.
Yeah, but like I said, we're working through some stuff in there. So it is fun to do this book that has, like all this sort of like goofy over the top like 90s bombast, but also get to do, like heartbreak and sort of like loss and regret, and the idea that this guy thought that he was like literally, like I think everybody thinks they're a good person, right? Until something happens and you step back and you just go like, well, what did I really do? Like have I helped? Have I made a net positive in the world? Have I made anything better? Have I just been hanging out, trying to be cool or try, whatever. So, and I think that everybody deals with that.
100%, 100%. Let's move over to Army of Darkness. This is one of the movies that I just rewatched, I don't know, a couple of months ago, or actually it's probably longer than that. It was when the title came out. What are you on issue 7 now, right? Yeah, so I mean that was 6, 7 months ago. I rewatched it when I saw that your title was coming out, just to kind of bring back the story. And it's one of the funniest, like over the top movies, which is one of the reasons why I loved it when it came out. Is it that fun? I assume this movie you watched a long time ago when it came out too, and it had an impact on you because it comes through in the writing. But did you I mean, is it pretty exciting to be able to write something like that for you?
Oh yeah, I mean it's sort of like right in my wheelhouse. I love horror, but I also write pretty funny, and so and I have a take on how I feel like those things go together. And so being able to like put that all into this book and just go like here's the part where it's emotional and where it's horror and where it's funny and how to make those things fit together. It's super fun for me. And just the story that I'm telling was available and hadn't been touched, and just was because everything I'm doing in this book, like on the one hand, I'm like, this is fun and unexpected, but also I'm just like, I feel like this is just what anyone would do if they were told like that you can have the sequel to Army of Darkness, so yeah, the fun of that movie definitely always is there reminding me to make sure that the story stays sort of like fun and bouncy, but also like, what I love about that movie is that it has this character Ash, and then everyone else in the story is sort of living just a regular like medieval horror story, right? But you've got this guy, this outsider, this like a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court type that's just like observing it all and going like, you guys are all stupid idiots, like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm getting out of here. And so having that, and but then the other side of Ash is that he actually is a stupid idiot as well, so like
Very
he
much
thinks
so.
that he's smarter than these primitive screwheads, but he's actually just, again, just a regular human trying to figure things out, and he's often wrong, often screws up, and often puts his foot in his mouth, or, you know, so that definitely makes him a fun character to write.
Yeah. No, it's definitely comes through. And that's going to be a 10-part series, right?
It's gonna be 13.
Oh,
It's
13 issues.
12 regular issues, and then we're doing a special at the very end that's going to be like a giant size.
Sweet.
It's not actually the finale. Like the issue 12 will wrap up the story, but then we've got like a little bit extra, a little bit more, and it's going to be just gory and action packed and fun for the final part.
Is that something you're hoping that you could continue in another story arc later, or have you even got thought about that yet?
I'm actually wrapping it up. I love having like a closed loop, like Stray Dogs is one of my favorite things that we've ever made. And one of the things I love most about it is just that it's finished, like you get to the end of it and you're like, that's it. And so I wrote this in the same way where like when you get to the end of it, you're like, that's that. So and the way I've seen Dynamite make comics all these 20 years of Army of Darkness is whoever comes along next is just going to pick it up and do their own thing. So I'm sort of like closing it out in a way that like mine will be finished, and sort of like there will be stuff there if people want to pick up from it, but it can be the sort of thing where if somebody decides like they only want to read one Army of Darkness cover comic ever, like they could just read that one, and you know so yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, then we get into Feral. So Stray Dogs, ultra successful. And then you come out with Feral. Did you already have the idea for Feral the minute you were done with Stray Dogs or during Stray Dogs, or did that come later on?
It came later. We had the idea that we wanted to do something with cats. But then it took a while to figure out like what that story would be, what it would entail, what the like Stray Dogs is using serial killer horror
Yeah.
and doing it with cute dogs. And it took a while to land on like what the scenario is that we would be in with cats that would feel appropriate and also feel like it would give us a lot of room to run around. So like landing, like figuring out zombies and deciding to go that direction is just like, oh, we could do this for a long, long time. And that's, besides just wanting to get together and make another story, we wanted to figure out a way to do another story that would be something that could stretch. Because like I said, Stray Dogs is like a closed loop, it's finished. But we really felt like we were figuring it out when we were getting to the end of that book, and we're just like, well, we wish we could keep going, but again, like I like having a thing that ends. But this one we're gonna give it a lot longer before it ends. Like we're planning to do it for hopefully like 50, 60, you know, a long run, which like you said before, like not a lot of people get to do it anymore. And so it is like an ambitious thing, but I feel like if based on Stray Dogs and based on like feeling like we cracked into something with that, like there had like there's books like We Three and Beasts of Burden and Pride of Baghdad, and these sort of like animal books, but We Three and Pride of Baghdad were like finished small things, they were huge in their impact, but like, they're not going to be another Pride of Baghdad, right? But we sort of took what was there in that like not anthropomorphic but animal genre stuff and sort of like figured out the angle on it that worked best for us, and so it feels like we have this thing that we need to figure out how to make it run for a while. So we have Feral, which we're going to run for a long time, and then we have other animal stories that we're just like that could be cool too. Like I'm not. People go like, "Oh, you're gonna get pigeonholed," and I'm just like, I don't think I'll get. And if I did, like I'm fine being pigeonholed on a very successful comic book.
Yeah,
I, was-
I
I
think
drew
people
My Little Pony for 10 years. Nobody pigeonholed me there either.
exactly. All right, then we come to one of the latest titles. Uncanny
Yeah.
Valley, which was a lot of fun, man.
Thank
Very
you.
fast pace. Story definitely took a turn at the end because you look at the cover, you're like, how is all this going to happen just looking at the cover? And then you
Yeah.
start to read it and you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I don't want to give anything away. It's new. People should get out there and check it out. But where did this story come about?
This is one. So, uh, the non-spoiler version of this is that it's like a coming of age, uh, cartoon live action type thing. It's like a Roger Rabbit, Stand by Me,
Yeah.
like Roger Rabbit, Percy Jackson type story. Um, but it's a story that I've had in mind for like 10 years. I've sort of been taking notes and writing down ideas about it. Um, and I just had this idea early on about like a cartoon world that lived alongside our world. And I read Planetary by John Cassaday and Warren Ellis, and that had this idea in it that all the things in pulp and genre stories and superhero stories and sci-fi stories all happened in our world, but just sort of like across this, like in this other dimension, you know? And so I thought about like how cool that would be if that was cartoons, you know, like if like Flintstones was the Stone Age, and if, you know, like in Japan people were like anime, and in, you know, France they were like, you know, French UPA cartoons, or, you know, like
Yeah.
um and so I just started thinking about that and writing down notes and ideas about it, and it sort of grew into this big um epic story about family, you know, and I think a lot of my stuff ends up being about family because, like I said, I came from a big family, and
Yeah.
it's just sort of like a way that you can center stories when you, instead of just making it about like the heroes and the action and stuff like that, you make it about the relationships between the people, and that makes it, I feel like, a lot. It sticks to your ribs more. You know, you read it and you just go like, yeah, that I'll remember what was going on in that book in 30 days when the next one comes out, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, that relationship between mother and son really comes through and how important that relationship is. Um, yeah, there's a lot in there that I think you could definitely hit some emotional chords, but then it's also a lot of action and it really goes in a direction you don't expect as you get toward the end of it, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people say that one's fast paced, and they say Feral is fast paced, and I wonder if all these things feel fast paced because of how frantic my life is. You know, like am I just writing like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and, you know, like I'm not really slowing down for anybody right now. So I
Yeah.
wonder if that's coming through in the work.
I feel like the pacing is exactly how it should be. For me, at least as a reader, I really enjoyed the pace of it. You don't dwell too long on a certain area. It feels like it just flows really nicely. And then you get some action and you get to the end and you're like, okay, I need more now. So I
Yeah,
feel like it came out really well. And then the characters that you're utilizing in here were a lot of fun as well. You can see you're drawing from a lot of things from, I think, a lot of people's childhood as
for
well,
sure.
building out this world, which I think is going to be fun as well.
Yeah, it's that first issue of Uncanny Valley is actually like a supersized issue. It's 28 pages long.
Yeah.
So we took pages actually from other issues to make sure that that one had could cram as much stuff in there as possible.
Mm.
So yeah, we definitely wanted to get a lot of stuff in there, but not have it feel like a slog to read. Like I feel like most of my stuff, when you're reading it, you could sit down and read it in like, you know, 10 minutes or whatever, because it, you know, hopefully it reads pretty smoothly. So.
Yeah. And what's the idea for Uncanny Valley? Is it going to be a shortened series, like a five-part, or is this going to be something that you hope that goes on a long time as well?
So it's solicited as a 6 issue thing, but
Oh,
it's hopefully going to be this first act of the story, 12 issues,
okay.
uh, which the numbers were pretty good on the book, and so we're just hoping to get the thumbs up that we can go ahead and do the whole thing, because it has like it, even in the first 6 issues, a lot of cool big stuff happens, but when we get all the way to issue, you know, 11, 12 in this story, like crazy stuff really happens. And so we're excited to get there. And Dave Wachter, who draws it, is just such a talented artist, and he can do so many different, you know, he can do different styles on the same page, which is not everybody can do it. And so I'm really, whenever we do an issue and I see that he can do something, like I'll push him to do something and he can do it, I'll just be like, okay, got it. Then let's see what we can make him do next. And so it gets crazy. Like there's stuff that happens at the end of if we do all 12 issues, if there's stuff that happens in like 11, where I'll be like setting him up for it, when we get to like issue 6 or something. I'll be like, you should start working on this because it's going to take a long time to, you know.
And have you
So
like gathered a lot of different cartoon characters that you're allowed to utilize? Like you have like a war chest of different characters that you want to bring into the story that maybe you can't talk about, but obviously you have to be careful on what you use, I would think, without getting
yeah,
permission. So
yeah, there's some stuff that we're using that like exists in the public domain, but then
yeah,
there's some stuff where we're just doing like analogs where, like the main character in this book is obviously looks a lot like a Yosemite Sam type.
yeah,
We're just like, diminutive cowboy type, and he's a little less Confederate than Yosemite Sam, like that's he looks more Midwestern than
yeah, for sure.
Southern.
But you
Um,
definitely get that Yosemite Sam vibe for sure.
for sure. Yeah. That
Yeah,
that's obviously when I told Dave to design, I was like, make us a Yosemite Sam. And
yeah,
so yeah, the, like we both come from such a cartoon background and me definitely like coming from a family that big, I grew up constantly watching cartoons because even if I had outgrown them, which I never really did,
yeah,
but there was, 4 other kids in the house right behind me that had not outgrown them. So it was just constantly Cartoon Network and Saturday morning and VHS tapes and Disney movies. And so I have this like brain that's just filled with like there's like comic book stuff and there's cartoon stuff but I don't like the idea of doing like cartoony comics or like say we did like a Looney Tunes comics or whatever, like that doesn't excite me as much as the idea of like what can I do? Can I take this and do this in an exciting different way, and
yeah,
um so yeah, like having all that stuff being like the fuel that drives my creativity and finding different ways to, make cartoon comics that are horror stories or make cartoon comics that are coming of age stories. And, like, I feel excited about that. And coming from like working as long as I did doing kids licensed comics, drawing My Little Pony, drawing, Star Wars kids comics and Rick and Morty and stuff like that, just taking that type of drawing and that type of creativity and then using it to do a different kind of thing has been a lot of fun. And it feels like a vindication also as somebody that, you feel like you're almost in like the licensed comic ghetto but you're just like we make comics too, like we can make comics. And so then showing them like this, this is
yeah, yeah. I'm hoping we get Steamboat Willie somewhere in one of these issues.
I mean, I would not count him out. That
All
guy,
right, very good. That's all you have to say.
yeah.
That made my day right there, man.
He's
Made
not
my,
going to be a pervert like he is in Savage Dragon, though. He will not be doing any sort of crazy,
I
sneaking up,
know.
no upskirt shit from Steamboat Willie.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, everyone's using Steamboat Willie in a lot of unique ways, man, lately. So I'm like, we'll see
Yeah.
what happens. But yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. Is there a property that you grew up with that if became available for you to work on, that you would die to do? Like, is there something you're like, man, I wish this would be available, or if I could write this comic because it was such a big part of my childhood?
Actually, I did Star Wars, and Star Wars was that for me for the longest time. And I did like 5 issues and a bunch of covers for the Star Wars Adventures book at IDW.
Yeah.
And and even though like that is the kids comic version and it's not like the main Star Wars title, it did not matter to me. Just like doing anything Star Wars really ticked a big box for me. And I don't like I was listening to I was at a signing with Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly.
Mm.
Is that right? Yeah, the other day, and they were talking about like bucket list characters and sort of like like getting to play with these characters and stuff like that. And really, after I did Star Wars, I did not have any more bucket list characters, and it sort of freed me up to do what I'm doing now, which is just making my Image comics, making my creator own comics, and that is the same way that I could feel it when I was reading Youngblood and I was reading Wildcats and Spawn, and I could feel that like this is them doing their full 100%, like nobody's telling them what to do. Like that's where I hope to be able to live, you know.
So far, so good, it looks like.
So far, so good.
Well, Tony, can you kind of talk to us about some of the places that you're going to be for signings within the next month? That way, if fans want to get in there and get something signed by you, they know where to find you.
Yeah, let me look here. I'm going to be at C2E2 this weekend in Chicago.
Nice.
And then the week after that, I have something still like every weekend. Okay, so the week after C2E2 is Free Comic Book Day, and I'm going to be at the Nerd Store in Utah.
Oh, yeah, I've shopped there several. My daughter lives in Utah. There's a couple of
Oh,
them.
cool.
Yeah, so you're probably going to be at
Yeah,
the fall one, which is huge. It's a big store there.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, I've been there a couple times. I like those guys were huge Stray Dog supporters, and they've been big Feral supporters and real boosters. I like those guys. So I'm going to be there on the 4th, and then on the 11th, I'm going to be at Things from Another World in City Walk here in LA, by Universal City. And then on the 18th, geez, this is every weekend. On the 18th, I'll be in Detroit at Motor City Con. And then in June, nothing. So
There you go.
June, I'm going to be chilling. I mean, chilling. I'll be working constantly, but just at my house. And but over the next month or so, I'll be all over the place. So if you're in any of those places, please come out and see me. And if not, like I said, I'm going to be trying to get around in September and hit a bunch of places across the country. So
Awesome. And then people could find you. Is it just TonyFleece.com?
TonyFleece.com. I got a mailing list there, and also on every social, I'm just at Tony Fleece. So on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. Yeah, you can find me at any of those places. And literally, I think if you just turn on a podcast, I'll be on there because I've this is uh, this is my first of 4 of these today. So
Oh,
I
wow.
will. I'm gonna I'm gonna find a way to say all these things differently to somebody in 5 minutes.
I love it, man. Well, Tony, I want to be super respectful of your time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am truly a big fan of yours.
Bro,
Love
I can
everything
tell.
that you're doing.
I appreciate you having me on. It's very nice talking to you. It's nice talking. It's like I could tell that you read the books and you respond to them, and I appreciate that, man. And it means a lot. You spreading the word, telling the people who listen to your show to check it out. So, thank you so much for having me. And feel free to hit me up. You know, if you read something and you go like, I gotta talk to this guy. I'm always around. I'm easy to get a hold of. So hit me up and I'll come back on.
I love it, Tony. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tommy. Take care.
You too.